The Mistlands bring us some of the most beautiful mountainscapes we've yet to see in Valheim, and it's time we attempt our first build in one of these epic peaks. Hey guys, my name is Smitty, and today I'll be taking through the build of this awesome mountain pagoda. In this video, we'll cover the project from start to finish, where I'll provide my thoughts and insight throughout the process. Hope you enjoy, but without further ado, grab a snack, grab a drink, and let's get right into it. Starting out, I spent a lot of time trying to find the right location to start my build, but I chose this specific cliff face because I saw I could easily nestle some platforms into the crevice and upper rocks, and it was also nicely framed by these beautiful Mistland trees, which I wanted to have included into my build. Structural integrity was going to be a challenge here, so the first thing I did was create a wood iron mesh that my foundation could sit on. And I made sure that there were enough contact points with the surrounding mountains to ensure there'd be no weak spots that could possibly compromise the structure that would sit above. Once my mesh was complete, it was time to fill it in with the new marble blocks, which I'm really liking so far. I went for a curved shape for my platform as I thought it would complement the round structure of the pagoda I'd eventually build above. I also added a layer of angled marble underneath the foundation just to give it a little more substantial feel. A singular layer of marble just looked a little too thin to me, and I think the angled stones underneath add a nice tapered shape to the platform. I found that sometimes if you use a lot of marble, the material can sort of blend into each other, and so I added some wood shutter trim to the edge of my platform to add some nice contrast, and then also added some of the diverger wall lanterns hanging over the edge, which in my opinion just give this really cool fantasy feel. Next, I wanted to give the appearance that the platform was truly supported and not as free-floating, so I decided to add some thick wood pillars right below by placing and rotating the wood beams one rotation each time until I had a circular shape that I could fill in. Again, this was just an aesthetic decision and didn't really add to the structural integrity of the platform, but I really like how grand thick pillars can make a build feel, and I was really happy how this turned out. With the platform complete, it was time to start building out the structure of the pagoda. I started with the base outline of an octagon where each side was 4 meters in length, or in other words, I would place two 2x1 stone pieces and rotate 2 clicks each time until the loop was closed. Eventually, this was the shape that I ended up with. From here, I wanted to start getting what I call the bones of my structure in, and so I started by placing 4-meter log beams at each of the corners of my outline, and then placing crossbeams to connect them. I'd then continue up by placing 2-meter log beams on top of the first layer, followed by a pattern of beams facing inside the structure, as I wanted to ensure that my pagoda would have a slight taper to the tiered roofs that went up. This pattern did create some awkwardly spaced segments, but by placing in the crossbeams from opposite snap points, you can ensure that they meet in the middle and still look nice. Continuing this pattern up, I eventually ended up with a structure that looked like this, and is ready to start implementing my roofing. When putting in the roofing, I utilized the 26-degree darkwood pieces, as I knew each face of my structure was 3 meters high, and with a 1 meter drop for every 26-degree piece I placed, I would still have a 2-meter high full opening after placing a roof tile, which felt right. As for the corner areas, since we utilized an octagon shape, this meant that I could perfectly plug in the roof corners to these openings in a rotation that falls right in between the two faces. I would continue this pattern up for 3 levels, and on areas where there were awkward snapping points for the 26-degree pieces, I would simply custom place with shift to ensure that it was centered. As you can see, the result is a nice tiered roof that slightly tapers in as we go up, which I think just looks a little bit more interesting. The 4th and final level of roofing would go up vertically from the 3rd, so I needed to add an extra 1 meter of height to my structure to make sure that the spacing was correct. From here, I would continue with the same roofing pattern as the other layers, but in order to cap the top of the structure, I converted to the 45-degree pieces, and then clipped 2 of them together at the top. With the roofing in, the pagoda was finally starting to take form. The next thing I wanted to work on was getting some of the walls and siding in. For the lowest floor, I wanted a combination of marble and wood, but in order to add a little bit more depth to these walls, I elected to custom place them slightly sunken back into the marble ledge, so that it didn't sit as flat to the side. This is a subtle technique, but it can actually really help your walls just look a little bit better. I went ahead and added some log poles to the tips of my roof corners, and then also finished up the siding with the upper levels with some of the wooden shutters. I then circled back around, adding the diverger lanterns to the corners of the pagoda, and I love how these really draw your eyes to them and make the build pop. Finally, I circled back around to the bottom floor to add a splash of color with the blue jute banners, which I think just look really cool. At this point, I was really pleased with how the build was coming along. It felt clean, not overly complicated, yet still had a clear pagoda feel to it. The next thing I wanted to do was build a general layout for the interior, so I started with a fireplace, utilizing the black marble to build out a sturdy area that could also filter out the fire. And then I started planning for a way to build up to the second floor. For this, I utilized the new spiral staircase pieces, which I'm just loving, and not only are they helpful, but they're also a very stylish way to build up to the upper floors. There wasn't going to be much on this level, as I really just wanted to have access to better views from a higher vantage point, but I decided to leave the center of the floor open because I wanted to preserve the very open and high ceiling feel of the pagoda. I finished up with some iron railings and some blue jute carpet, knowing that there would be a more serious interior decorating effort happening later. Next, it was time to develop the area behind the pagoda. I knew I wanted to build a small little forging area, so I found a nice tucked away spot in the corner where it had just enough room for a hearth and some forging stations and some upgrades to decorate the area. Again, not really a lot of space here, but I have a soft spot for creating cozy spaces, and I love the challenge of working in confined areas. The next thing I wanted to build was some kind of altar that utilized the awesome colors that some of the new magical pieces bring. I wanted the centerpiece to be the Wisp Fountain, since I think it's a really eye-catching structure, and the purple is absolutely brilliant. I then utilized the marble, wisp torches, and frost staff to stage the area around it, enhance that arcane feeling of it. My thinking here was that perhaps this was an altar where powerful items such as the frost staff were kept, but again, I just really love some of the visual effects that some of these items have. I wanted to distinguish this area a little more and make it feel a little more secluded from the rest of the build, so I built up a barrier wall with some marble and metal fencing, and then capped it off with some marble points and some diverger lanterns. Nothing groundbreaking, but I think it adds a little element of story to this build, which I like. I was then left with a little bit of blank space between the altar and the forge, so I decided I would keep things simple and fill it with some storage items. Just some chests and shelves, which help the build feel a little more lived in and functional. With the back area complete, my attention now came to the rocks that sat right above my main platform. I knew right from the start that I wanted to build another small platform up here and give an extra dimension of height to my build, but I wasn't sure what I wanted to put here. I started out very similarly to my main platform by outlining it with wood iron beams and then filling it in with the marble pieces, but this time each face was only one piece wide instead of two. It then made sense to match the style of my trim with my main platform, so I added the wooden shutters and diverger lanterns to keep the theme consistent. Since I didn't create a stairway to these platforms, I decided that it made sense that I should include a portal somewhere, and this new platform served as a good spot to place it. However, I didn't want to leave the portal looking plain and boring, so I spent some time trying to spruce it up by lining it with the marble blocks. It took a little bit of experimenting before I found a design that I felt good about, but ultimately I found one that I felt added a nice interesting wrinkle to the look of my portal and made it blend in nicely to its environment. My final project in the build was building a stairway to connect my upper portal platform with my main platform. I decided to do this by utilizing a technique in which I custom place wood floor pieces in an ascending pattern leading up to my desired location. I chose this method over utilizing spiral staircases or other stair pieces because I wanted to build a stairway that would both respect and respond to the environment that it was being built over. And although this method takes longer and it's more difficult, it's much more adaptable to its environment, which means I can react, change directions, and be more precise with how I build it. It may not have been the most glorious staircase in the world, but again, I liked how it molded to its environment and contoured the rock around it nicely. With my portal platform and stairway done, I was feeling really happy with where my build was at. I thought it had a nice composition and looked really epic tucked away in these cliffs. All that was left to do was polish up some areas with some additional decorations and cue the cinematic.